Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I'm so happy to have as our guest right here on 90.3 WHPC, our guest, Tricia Silverman. Tricia is a registered dietitian and has a master's degree, and she has been a fitness and nutrition enthusiast since she was a child. She's a registered dietitian, certified wellness coach, and fitness instructor, certified as a personal trainer and also for group fitness. And she is an international Amazon best-selling author for her book, Healthy Benefits, Investments in Nutrition, Movement, and Healthy Habits That Pay Off. Also, Tricia teaches nutrition, entrepreneurship, and healthy aging for Northeastern University. She creates nutrition programs for conferences, employee wellness, senior centers, and more. And she has a coaching practice direct to individuals where she helps people lose weight, eat better, move more, and get more out of life. Tricia leads nutrition, weight management, and coaching certifications throughout the United States. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tricia.
Thank you, Ellen. What a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
So we want to go back in time, and we just want to remind you that our marvelous engineer, Sean, has said, stay close to the mic so we can hear you clearly.
Sure.
Let's go back in time. Let's visit with Tricia Silverman, the little girl. When you were growing up, when did you first have an inkling that, healthy living might be your goal?
One of the things that really stands out to me is when I went to work. My dad owned a deli in Long Island, New York, and I was told when I start working there, I'm going to gain weight like everyone else. And that really struck a chord with me because I was an overweight kid and I didn't want to gain more weight as a teen. And I found that when I started working there, when I walked home, it really made a difference. So that was my first real aha moment with fitness, that, wow, if I walk, I can balance out some of the calories that I'm taking in. So that was my fitness aha moment.
Let me ask you, Tricia, since we're broadcasting right here on Long Island in Garden City, let's give a shout out to your dad's deli's hometown. Where was that?
Yes. Shirley, New York is where the Firestone Deli used to be many years ago. And my family is from the Mastic Beach, Mauritius area.
Wow, that place has grown since you've been a little girl. And it's well known for many, many things at this point. So that's great that you're able to relate that story for our Long Island audience. And that's very interesting to me because I want to share just a little story. And that my husband, who's Italian, when he was growing up, he ate, of course, a lot of pasta and bread, right? Which is comfort food for Italians and everybody. But he noticed that everyone in his family was overweight. And his mom sort of supported that, saying that's like a healthy way to be. So that's interesting to me that you had the same thing. Oh, you're going to work here at our family deli?
Right.
You're going to put on weight
you're
too.
You're going to put on the weight.
And yet it was lauded in a way as being, a badge of honor as part of your family.
Well, I remember my grandmother saying, like we have big bones in our family. We're big bones. And when you gain weight, you may notice that your watches get tighter and your rings get tighter. And the opposite happens when people lose weight, that your watch may get a little looser and your ring may fit better. So I don't think that my family was big boned. I think we were big eaters. I'm Italian as well. And I think a lot of people with health, blame it on the family. Oh, well, my family has heart disease. We have heart disease in our family. But how does the family eat? If you grew up with, the deli eating bologna sandwiches and Otis Spunkmeyer cookies and all the wonderful things that New York delis have, and you overdo it, then you'll be, your health will result in, things that you don't want to happen. But the good news is that you can change that. And it doesn't mean you can never have a cookie or a breakfast sandwich again. It just means really balancing out and making most of what you eat healthy. The new dietary guidelines say that 85% of what we are eating should be healthy. So if we could all think about that, 85%, so it leaves a little bit of room for those, some of those fun foods. But if we can, most of what we eat, if that can be healthy, we'll really be doing our bodies good. That is so true. And,
I think one of the tricks, I know for me, I have to say my parents modeled healthy eating. They didn't care about organic like I do, but they ate a full whole food meal 3 times a day and exercised all day, both of them. Their butt, and my mother now is 92, never touches the chair.
Oh,
and so they would be either swimming, playing tennis, so exercise, which you already mentioned, just taking a walk home from the deli seemed to help.
That helped a lot. And moving really is the key. And when I coach people, a lot of people say, oh, I have this foot injury for years, or my back is hurt, so they don't exercise. And I like to flip the switch on that and say, well, what can you move? If you have, a back injury, can you still walk? Or if you have a foot injury, can you do chair exercise? And a physical therapist is your best friend to help show you what you can do and also to help heal. Because sometimes we have an injury in one area, but strengthening a muscle in another area of the body really may heal that injury, and you may never have known that. So it's moving is really important. And I appreciate you sharing that story about your parents. That is that's a true testament to moving and to eating healthy throughout life.
Yeah. And to this day, they have never used a prescription medication. So,
wow.
Then you save a lot of money and you save a lot of side effects. And it's really just totally, I think, should be the norm. But unfortunately, particularly here in the United States, so much of the food is processed. There's so much wheat and gluten in everybody's diet. And I love what you pointed out, Tricia, that it doesn't mean you can never touch a breakfast sandwich again, but how about considering it a once a week treat instead of an everyday food item?
That is so true. Really thinking about most of what I eat will be healthy, and then small amounts will, leave a small amount for those funner foods. And people notice when they switch to eating that way, they feel an abundance of energy. And it's interesting when I coach people, I just see it all the time. So I see when people start eating healthier and moving, they have less pain, they sleep better, they don't get sick as much. And now with the pandemic, the ongoing pandemic, what can we do to feel better and to support our immune systems? And there's not enough talk about that. And what we can do to support our health and immunity is to move and to eat well most of the time.
And that's why working with someone to help you put that program together is ideal because, first of all, working with someone like yourself. And I want to say, you keep saying coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't always have people who call themselves coaches here on my radio shows because you can actually call yourself a coach after sort of a 2-minute or 1 weekend webinar. You are an RD. You are an RD MBA. I mean, I would shout that out a lot more if I were you. And the coaching is more like how you deliver it to people, but that is not your training.
Well, my training is as a registered dietitian, and that's many years of training and then, many years of experience. after the training, after you take a test, after you do an internship at a hospital, and then you're in the field just doing this work for many years. I became a coach, a certified coach, and that took several months to gain that experience. That's through a company called Well Coaches. And that, combined with being a dietitian, really has helped me to help my clients achieve great things. And before I became a coach, and I know that term is thrown around a lot now, but I would just give people, tell them what to do and give them a lot of handouts and say, read these and do this. When I had that coach's training, which, by the way, I didn't want to do, but there was a company that would hire me as a dietitian, and then they would farm out the coaching to someone else. So I would meet with a group for 8 weeks, and they would get to know me. I would get to know them. I would teach them nutrition and exercise. It was half nutrition, half fitness. And then at the end, they would hire a coach to coach the people. And after the program ended, and I thought, why can't I? Because I'm a dietitian. I work with them. I have a good rapport. And then I reluctantly got the coach's certification, but that taught me how to work with people one-on-one in a better way and to listen a lot. And that listening really helps. And coaching provides accountability, but it's more client-directed than coach-directed, which I love, because I work on what people are willing to do. I can tell you to eat healthy 85% of the time, but are you willing to do that? And the one-on-one sessions help me to figure out what are people willing to do and how do I guide them toward optimal health within their own parameters, because everyone's different with what they're willing to do.
That's so true. And I want to remind you, listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse. And today, my guest is Tricia Silverman, registered dietitian, MBA, health coach, and author of Healthy Benefits, Investments in Nutrition, Movement, and Healthy Habits That Pay Off. That title, how did you come up with it? Because it does sound like your life path.
Yes. So the title is Healthy Dividends, Investments in Nutrition, Movement, and Healthy Habits That Pay Off. And I got the idea of healthy dividends because I would always say at the end of a presentation, because I do a lot of employee wellness programs, I would say, all right, you came here for an hour and you invested an hour in listening to me talk. I want you to get dividends on that investment. So what are you going to do? What's the 2 things you can do after, even today, after people listen to the program today, what's the one thing that you can do to move toward optimal health? So that dividend stuck in my head. And then I came up with the title, and then it just sort of took off from there. So the premise of the book is that if you eat healthy, you will reap the dividends of the ultimate dividend is living longer. So like your parents that have lived these long, wonderful lives. So if you eat healthy, if you move, if you treat your body kindly, you can really have that ultimate dividend living longer. But then there are other dividends, and you nailed them on the head as well by saying that your parents don't have to pay for these medications or the copays that can be very expensive as you get older, having a lot of copays for medication, but also the sleeping better, the more energy that people feel. They just feel great when they eat better. And it's not all about weight. It's about how we feel. And many people feel better once they shed off some excess pounds, but it's really that good, healthy food makes you feel great. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. The quality of food is so important.
Well, your book is just beautiful. And I'm looking at it right here. Healthy Dividends, Investments. That's such a great way to discuss it. That's what people are doing. They're deciding that they are important enough to follow your advice because it leads pretty quickly into dividends.
It does. And it's, when I wrote the book, I wanted to just put everything I know and my favorite stories in there that could help people. And so this book is like the nutrition Bible. Many people have called it a resource that they can go back to. And that is how I intended it. You don't have to read it in one sitting. You can skip ahead to a chapter that applies to you, such as I have a chapter on sleeping better. And, if that's what your focus is, read that. If your focus is on losing weight, there's a chapter on that. So I separated it out so you can zero in on what's important to you. But going through the whole book will really give you a really nice pathway and lots of options to choose from for moving toward optimal health.
And a good place to start is shopping. And you have a marvelous chapter called Smart Shopping. And one part is called Dig Deep into Food Labels. So why don't you dig deep into food labels for us right here?
Yes. So one of the important things to think about, if you can't read it, if you don't know what an ingredient is, then don't eat it. So, for example, if you see initials, BHTs, butylated hydroxytoluene, what is that? If you don't know that, and I like to think about it this, would your great-grandparents have that on their shelf? No one would have a bottle of BHT on their shelf. So then more likely than not, it's going to be not something great to eat. And that's banned in the EU. It's a preservative, just not great for us. And there are sneaky things like in candy, there's titanium dioxide, and that's also an ingredient in helicopters. So why would we want to eat something that's an ingredient in a helicopter? It's shocking to me. And I dig deep, and when you see these ingredients, you can dig deep as well. And I am shocked time after time after time with ingredients that are out there in the food supply. Carmine is another one, and that's in some candies, and it's even used as a coloring in some yogurt. And carmine is the red exoskeleton of a beetle. So it's part of a bug, and it's used as a colorant. But we can color things with beet juice, so why don't we use that? Or how about this? Buy yogurt and then buy fresh fruit. Put fresh red strawberries in your fruit, and then you'll get that red color in there. We don't need to buy old. Basically, I look at fruited yogurt as yogurt and old fruit.
And sugar, way too much sugar.
Way too much sugar, or even worse, artificial sugar.
Wait, let's stop there because you have a beautiful chapter on sugar. And even starting there, focusing on using your book or speaking with you, I'm sure you do consultations online, just about recognizing some of these simple things. And if you do this for 1 week, you're not going to maybe lose all the weight. You're not going to go down 4 sizes. But right away, within 1 week, sometimes people feel a little worse, right, with the first 3 days because of the addictive qualities of many of these things. But within a week, they start to wake up and they don't have so much mucus in their nasal cavity. They slept better. I mean, the benefits are pretty quick. You have a whole chapter on reducing sugar and the link between sugar and chronic diseases, which you know so well as a registered dietitian. But let's talk about artificial sugars.
So artificial sugars, in my opinion, haven't been tested very well, and some of them have been approved based more on politics than on science. I think that if we had a bunch of mice running around right now, let's say your home, and you fed half of the mice organic fruits and vegetables, nuts, beans, whole grains, and they were thriving and running around and jumping. And then you fed the other mice artificial sugar and they were growing tumors and they weren't doing so well. Would you want to eat that artificial sugar? And the companies that manufacture these artificial sugars will say, well, those tests were on animals. So, humans are different. But to me, if a mouse will eat something and not do so well, I don't want to eat that either. And I think that a lot of the artificial sugars, one of the things that I think about the most is that they haven't been tested on humans for the lifetime of humans. So we really don't know what effect these artificial sugars will have. And diet soda has had credible studies done that have found a link between diet soda, heart attack, stroke, and dementia. And these are in peer-reviewed scientific journals. So, how much diet soda are you drinking? What's in diet soda? And, we see a lot of artificial sugar. So decrease the diet soda, decrease the artificial sugar, and then even the regular sugar. And that's, if you're going to do it, honey and maple syrup are among the most natural, but they're still sugar. So try to minimize how much you have. And a quick, for instance, is when I use a sweetener, I'll use maple syrup, but in a very small, I'll use a half teaspoon or a teaspoon at a time. Try to figure out what's the least amount you can get away with where you still get a little bit of sweetness, but you're not overdoing it.
Yes, those are great examples. And something that really tricks people is when they have, let's say, on yogurt, since you brought that up, and we're speaking to our guest today, Tricia Silverman, and she's a registered dietitian and author of Healthy Dividends, Investments in Nutrition Movement and Healthy Habits that Pay Off. And by the way, this book is on Amazon, and you can get a Kindle copy for pretty much free.
Yes.
I think you have it for 99 cents, so you really want people to have this. But in terms of sugar, what you just said, isn't there a lot of tricksters? Because yogurt, when it says light, anything that says light has these artificial and possibly extremely toxic and possibly cancer-causing artificial sweeteners in them.
It's really important to check your label to see what's in there. And light, when we think of light, it sounds like a lovely word, light and airy, but light does often have artificial sugars. More likely than not, you'll find that in there. And also sugar alcohols may be in there when you see a low or no sugar. And sugar alcohols are carbohydrates that don't get digested very well. And they often give you an upset stomach. They can have a laxative effect. They can give you diarrhea if you have excess amounts. So we want to be careful. And those tend to end in etol, sorbitol, maltitol. So you want to be careful if you see etol, again, ITOL. And that has been troublesome for a lot of people. They think, I can go into, the chocolate shop on vacation and get sugar-free candy. And, whereas if you just had one piece of the regular, you'd probably be fine. But if you have that sugar-free, and especially if you overdo it, you can really have a stomach rumbling that won't be friendly on your vacation.
And another thing, thank you so much for sharing that extremely accurate and true information. Many people embark on healthier living for weight loss, even though, I actually have written 16 books, and one of mine is called Weight Loss and has a lot of the same tips that you're talking about in here. But yet, I think weight loss is not the greatest factor to try to motivate you to be healthy. Just try to be healthy, and the weight loss sort of comes along with it. But the research shows that a lot of these artificial sweeteners that you discuss in depth, when people start using them, it does not lead to weight loss. It often leads to weight gain because it's not satisfying your body. And
what's happening is that sweetness is so much sweeter than sugar in many of these artificial sweeteners. So your body, you're having this artificial sweetener. Then when you do have nature's candy, which is fruit, you have that, and it doesn't taste as good because you got used to that artificial sweetener. So it's another thing to consider. And the good news is when you start to get those junky things out of your diet, then good food will taste really good, and you'll be able to taste fruit and feel that wonderful sweetness of fruit.
And besides sweet, I really love your focus on, one thing people do find when they start to lead a healthier lifestyle is the American, what we call SAD, let's say the standard American diet, it's really lacking in some very important flavors. For instance, bitter. Bitter is actually an important flavor, and we really shy away from it in the American diet. It's usually sprinkled in more ethnic cooking, like turmeric has a slightly bitter flavor, dandelion, which you find in Italian dishes. And bitter is very important because that flavor triggers digestive enzyme release.
It reminds me of broccoli rabe, which is a really wonderful Italian vegetable that I grew up with when I went to my grandparents' house in Long Island. And you don't, it's not very popular, but it is really wonderful. And there's bitter melon that's, an Asian delight. And
I don't know about delight, that word delight.
For many people it is. And if it's prepared well, I have Asian friends and they made a lovely dipping sauce for bitter melon. When I made bitter melon on my own, it's very bitter, but they made it in such a way that it was delightful. I have not been able to duplicate that since, but we do. You're absolutely correct. We're not used to that, and it can be really yummy. And I grew up with it, so it's it can be an acquired taste if you're not used to it. But if you don't eat any vegetables, you might not want to start with broccoli rabe. But eventually it's good to work up to that because it's very enjoyable.
Boy, your book is so comprehensive and there's so much to talk about. We only have a few minutes till we'll be ending our show. So tell people how you work with them and how they can get in touch with you, Tricia.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I do a lot of group programs and I've been doing them on Zoom since the pandemic began. And then I work with people one-on-one as a nutrition coach, and that's over the phone or through Zoom. So that's how people can work one-on-one with me. And then the book, as you mentioned, the Kindle is only 99 cents. I've kept it low. It was originally for promotional reasons. Right before the pandemic, my book came out. And then during the pandemic, so many people were losing jobs. I felt, let me keep it low as long as I can. And then if people do buy it at that low price, if you can write a review, I would really appreciate that. And, I'm going to keep it that way, as long as I can. And even the paperback is the lowest price that Amazon will allow me to charge, which in the US is $8.49. Otherwise I can't sell it on there. So I have kept it low. I want it to be really affordable for people. But having a coach, a dietitian is really important for accountability. And, I do, as you mentioned, I have both. So I feel like that is a helpful combination to really help people feel better, lose weight, sleep better, exercise more, or move more. I like to use that a little bit more than the term exercise more. But they can find me on www.triciasilverman.com. That's TRICIASILVERMAN.com. And once more, the book's title is Healthy Dividends, Investments in Nutrition, Movement, and Healthy Habits That Pay Off. And from a fellow Long Islander, I just want to give a shout out to everyone out there.
Oh, yeah. And certainly your people here on Long Island can listen. And then, of course, we also broadcast. And then we have I guess it's called a podcast in the archives. I don't know the difference between radio shows and podcasts. I have to ask my brilliant engineer who's with us today, Sean, where does that line? But nonetheless, the show is available to anyone. And if you like what you heard here today, you can tell your friends to listen, and we will have live links to you, Tricia, as well. So Wonderful. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I really appreciate this. Have a wonderful day.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.